Now check this out. Expect it and embrace it. Expect it and embrace it. Don't run from opposition. Don't be fearful of opposition. It's going to come. If what you are doing matters eternally, if the vision for your life comes from God, opposition will take place. I'm going to show you by testimony of Nehemiah's life. Look in chapter 4, verse 1 through 3. Here's what it says. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. Remember, that's God's people. And in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria, he said, what are those feeble Jews doing? In other words, he was asking, what are God's people doing? What are God's people doing? Will they restore the wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Offering sacrifices in the Old Covenant was a form of worship. So he's saying, what will they do? Worship this impotent God? Worship this powerless God, this God with no real power? Will they finish it in a day, talking about the rebuilding of the wall? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what they are building, even if a fox climbing up on it would break it down, would break down their walls of stone. One guy says, what are they doing? The other guy says, oh, don't worry about it. Whatever they build is going to fall down anyhow. God's powerless. He's impotent. There's no way he's going to help them. He can't help them, is what they were saying. Now check this out. Those were people that were outside of God's people. Outside of the camp. New Testament language, outside of the church. If you continue to read chapter 5 and even into chapter 6, what you'll see is not only does opposition come from the outside, it can come from the inside as well. What happened is this negativity that had been started outside of God's people, it flowed inside of the camp. And those that were standing on station at the wall, those that were building, those that had their tools and their resources and their energy and committed it to this rebuilding effort, those that were plugged in and doing what they could with what they had to make a difference, to attach themselves to the rebuilding effort, they got tired and they got weary and they heard the negativity, and many of them put their hammers down and they started to get negative. They started to get negative. Opposition will happen from the outside, and it'll also happen on the inside. I was in Houston not long ago, I told you, with Team Impact, and we were a part of the largest effort that's ever taken place in our 11 years of ministry in the U.S. Done some bigger things outside the U.S., but not in the U.S. We were partnering with a pastor in a church, one of the largest churches in the U.S., a well-respected leader in Christendom for over 50 years now. We were able in 9 days in public schools to speak to over 100,000 students, sharing a message of hope and encouragement. And then in 4 nights, we were able to preach the gospel to tens of thousands of people and saw over 2,000 people surrender their lives to the Lord Jesus Christ in just 4 nights. Now, in the process of this large crusade, we encountered opposition. There were those in the community that did not like the message that we brought, that Jesus Christ saves. There were those that didn't like it. It made its way into the office, and I remember this Christian leader as he communicated to his staff, and they communicated to us, and these were his words. I would not be worried unless we didn't face opposition. He said, I'm not going to be worried unless we were not facing opposition. He said, I expected this. I anticipate. I'm embracing this because now we're going to trust God and we're going to make His name famous all over this community and beyond, even unto the world. Do you know when our vision is big? Now check this out. I'm talking about big enough that we would need God's help. As a matter of fact, I would go ahead and say, based on the testimony of Nehemiah's life and those that walked before us, If your vision does not require God's help, go back to your prayer closet and pray some more. Because if it's not big enough to require His help, it's not worth following. It's not worth attempting. It's not worth chasing. Chase a dream that is so big, it cannot be accomplished without God's help. And when you chase that dream, I'm telling you, opposition will come because all of heaven is pulling one way and all of hell is pulling the other way. And do you know who wins? As I understand my Bible, it says no weapons formed against us shall prosper. It says if God be for us, who can be against us? Even John wrote, greater is He that is in me than he that is in the world. If we believe these things, come on, opposition.